So because Susan's not here, well, I was going to do this anyway, but what I want to do today is watch some videos of Masters Zhang and Feng doing the first section of the 24. So we're going to watch, these are going to be very short videos because they're only the first section. We're going to watch 4 of them. So it'll be the equivalent of watching a whole 24. So I have these queued up. Make yourselves comfortable where you can see your computer screen, and we will watch these. Okay, this is a video of Feng. He's actually doing the 48, but the first section of the 48 is the same as the first section of the 24. And you're going to see some differences from the way we do it, but every video we see, you'll see will be slightly different. The quality of these videos is not the best, but you just have to sort of look past it. And this is an older video. This is probably from the early 90s, maybe even the late 80s. So Feng is still in good shape. And let's just go ahead and watch this first section.
I just said you were muted. I couldn't hear anything. I didn't know if you.
Can you hear me? Kevin, what did you notice about that performance?
It's like 90% different.
Yeah, it is a little different, and it's an early video, right? He's probably in his early 60s there, so it was probably done in about 88 or so. Rand, what did you notice?
I don't know.
Well, we're going to watch 3 videos of Feng. Each video is very different, right? What you'll notice about any serious performer is their form is going to change depending on their age, depending on how they have worked out the form, the various forms, and also who their audience is. Now, this one was done as a tape, as a teaching tape. So there's 2 things. We'll watch it again since it's very short. There's 2 things that I can point you toward. One is, did you notice how small his circles are? So he's not doing this. He's doing this. Why? Why, Kevin?
For me, it's more martial oriented rather than.
It's much closer to old Chen style, to Chen village Chen style. So it's much more martial. the truth is when you do this martially, you don't have time to do this, all right? That's what it's got to be. You have a split second to do something. You don't have time to be super big. So you can see one of the major differences between old Chen style from Chen village, which is where it was developed, to Huanyan Tai Chi, which is based on that, but includes Huanyan Qigong. So lots and lots of Qigong. So what's the difference? Well, it's exactly what Kevin outlined there. When you're doing Huanyan Tai Chi, what you're focusing on is developing your mind and your energy body. And it's very large because essentially you're doing Tai Chi as Qigong. So for people like the three of us, right, that's the right thing to do. You can really grab something out of this. We're not going to be martial artists. You have to start that when you're 10 years old. Right? And Kevin, you're not 10 years old anymore, are you? Yeah, either am I. So this is much more oriented toward health and towards self-development. Not that old Chen style isn't, right? But yeah. So what you see with Master Zhang there is how he's still at that time in his career was much closer to old Chen style. Now, if it's an 88, or that could have been 86 or even 84, but as he got into the 1990s, that's kind of when he was developing Huanyan style, a variation on the old style. We won't watch it again. We probably won't have time here. Let's look at the next one. This is another one of Feng from much later in his career. I was looking for when that tournament really was, and I'm not sure, but I'm going to guess that was around 95 or 96. So somewhere between 8 and 10 years later than that first one. You can see he's put a little weight on, right? And I'm sure you noticed that it was much larger. The circles, instead of being like that, they're much larger. It's much closer to classic Huanyan Tai Chi that he developed as time went on. And yet it still has a lot of flavor of the old Chen style too. Ran, any comments?
Yeah, mostly what you said. I mean, you do see he does emphasize the movements here. He doesn't hide them.
Um, I like both those videos of him. He's very present. He's still young and strong enough to really do what he wants to do in there. As he gets older, I mean, he kept performing up until literally the day he died, practically. But as he gets much older, it becomes much more difficult for him to really do the form. And although he did not let anybody know, in the last 5 years of his life, he was dealing with cancer, which he eventually died from. So in the last few years of his life, he was in his 80s. It was a little iffy. All right, we're going to watch a third video of him. This one really focuses on who his audience is, or not so much who they are, but what type of audience they are. In the first one, it was a teaching video, so it's going out. He wants to show people the more martial side of things. The second one was a tournament, and so he's representing himself and his school, etc., because he had a big school in China. And this third one is something much more specific. In this third one, he's visiting in Japan, and he's doing a workshop demonstration. So he's going to be on a stage, and it's a really nice video. It's a whole set of videos, actually. We're just going to watch the first 6 moves, which is its own little video. And he's working in front of an audience of Japanese martial artists and people interested in learning about what he's doing. He was very popular in Japan. I went there many times. So this is one of his teaching demonstrations for people in Japan, most of whom had never seen any of this stuff before. So let's just take a look at it. I turned the sound off because I don't think any of us speak Japanese. But okay, so that was interesting to my eyes. It was a much simpler version of what we usually do. The essentials were all there, pretty much all there, but it was much simpler. And if you followed the things that he was saying, right, you could, enough of what he was saying with his words was repeated with his gestures. So you could see a lot of what he thought was most important. Yeah, Kevin.
A lot of the time, his weight on his right foot was on his heel,
Yeah,
and I've not seen that before.
that's one of his trademarks. Absolutely. Feng got famous in China because back in, for two reasons. Back in 81, 82, he was challenged by an American, actually Bruce Francis, who I think lives up in Marin. And Feng beat his ass 3 times in a row and caused Bruce actually to come back to the United States and to close his martial arts school and to go and study. That was one reason. It wasn't that he had beaten somebody that made Feng famous. What made Feng famous was he had beaten an American. And that was important to the Chinese. The second reason he got so famous is once the Cultural Revolution was basically over, which was in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was safe to go out and practice martial arts again. They had a big conference, I believe in Shanghai, where most of the higher level masters from throughout China came, and they did a whole bunch of stuff, including matches, real matches. And Feng won them all. And that made him very high level in China. And so his subsequent fame was really based on those two incidents. I thought it was very interesting because it's a teaching video. And he's teaching people who know nothing about Tai Chi, so they had never studied anything else. It was very, very slow, very, very clear. And it's the only videos I know of Master Feng being that slow and that clear. Most of the time, even in Chinese video teaching videos, he's not that way. But he was that way for this particular audience. So you can say, well, that's very exceptional. You would never do a performance like that very often in your life, which may be true. But there's a lot to be learned from watching someone move, maybe not quite that slowly all the time, because he was obviously stopping and then talking about things. So it was a little slower than it ought to be. Nevertheless, it's very beautiful. It's very slow and very clear. There's no reason to rush, honestly. The good that Tai Chi can do your body happens when you move slowly. This is a way of practicing that is unknown in the West, but it works. Moving very relaxed and very slow will allow your body to repair itself in ways that real vigorous exercise will not do it. So don't be afraid to be slow. Now we're going to watch another slow one, not quite as slow as the one with FENG, but this is a teaching tape from my teacher, Master ZHANG. So let's watch that. Okay, so that tape is from 2002, and Zhang still had some of the old fire in his form, right? He was being very slow, very careful. The earlier tape of FENG where he was teaching, he was interrupting himself and talking, so it's not quite easy to compare the two. But what made Zhang such a good teacher is he had worked out a really good flow form. Very clear. So his ability to demonstrate what was going on was very clear. FENG had the same thing, but he rarely did it. mostly he worked at a much higher level. And for beginners, Feng was not a good teacher for beginners because he was just too advanced. Now he could slow it way down, and he did when he was in Japan. He did when he came to the United States and worked with us here. But 98% of the tapes you see of him, he's not doing that. He's working much more advanced kind of level. Master Zhang, I can remember about two examples of him kind of cutting loose and really doing his own form. One of them was in a private lesson with me. And that's when you saw, oh, yeah, okay, we're working here, but there's much higher levels. But mostly he did not do that. He was teaching beginners. Even people who had been with him for 8 or 10 years, in his eyes, were still beginners. So he was very slow, very clear. If you watch that tape of Zhang and watch his belly, you'll see what's going on. You have to watch it several times, right? He's demonstrating everything. If you've got eyes to see it, he's demonstrating everything. So Zhang was a great teacher. About 5 years after that, he went back to China and he had a medical emergency while he was in China. And unfortunately, he went to a traditional Chinese medical doctor who really screwed him up. And he ended up in the hospital for a month. And it's probably lucky that they saved his life. Then he came back to the United States and he went to a Chinese doctor, but who was a Western doctor, which they have in San Francisco. So he went up to Phil Hill and they found him a Chinese doctor who spoke Mandarin. And it turned out what he had is gout, which is, they gave him 2 pills and said, go home, you'll be fine. But in China, he went through this whole rigmarole, drinking something like 27 liters of some certain fluid. I don't know, yada, yada, yada. This was with the traditional Chinese medical doctor, and it did not work. It put him in the hospital. And it didn't do anything for the gout, and it put him in the hospital. So I'm telling you that story because from then on, his form, he did much less form, and it was much, in a way, much reduced from what he had been. So anyway, the tape we saw of him there, he still really had some of the fire in there, but he was banking it back and being very, very clear so that you guys as beginners could really see it. And it made him a really good teacher for me, especially for the first 5 years or so. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left, but let's do the first section of the form. Think back on those 4 demonstrations that you just saw. And think about what it is you want to do. Where do you fit in that, right? Any of them are fine, but you shouldn't pick a style or a speed or a degree of martial application which is way beyond your capabilities. You should look at what you actually know and can do and work in that and just push it just a tiny little bit. All right? So I'm just going to pick Master Zhang's version since he was my teacher. All right? Rand, you pick anybody you want. We'll see what happens, right? So very calming, at least it was for me. What did it look like, Kevin?
Not the slowest I've ever seen you move. I mean, you used to give me so much crap about going slow. I know I was doing it wrong, but you kept saying faster, faster.
Master Zhang used to always yell at me for being too fast. You were too fast. You were too fast. And of course he was right, but I can't help it. But that was very calming. Rand, what did you think? What did you think of that pace?
I think it's a good pace. It gives you time to think about the current move.
Yeah, I agree. So I will try to rein myself in from now on and go a little slower when we're doing the class. Okay, so tomorrow, I guess it depends on whether Susan comes back. If Susan comes back in, I want her to see these videos, so we might just repeat the class tomorrow if she comes. Chances are if she's down with something, she's not even going to come in tomorrow, so it'll be next week. So tomorrow we'll watch a couple videos. I haven't decided who, but now we'll start watching some of the higher level students who have worked with Master Feng and Zhang, and just see what you think, because they're very different. Very different from what we just looked at here.
What do you think of?
Yourselves a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Kevin, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, what do you think of that Baji demonstration in Japan? That was pretty crazy.
Well, Baji is very different. You know, Chen Shan was a big Baji guy.
Yeah,
I think that was his well, wrestling was his first. Jiao was his first.
Yeah.
Art, but then he got into Baji, and then only later did he get into TAIJI.
well, I remember Michael took Chen Shang to Stanford, and they did that whole demonstration on all the power he could generate. But the fact that he just, like, I don't know what he was doing with his hand other than just tensing stuff up. But this business where your weight, it was really, that's my thinking. A lot of what Tai Chi is that leverage,
If you take your elbow and
Yeah.
into somebody's solar plexus, they're going to go down.
Well, he wasn't even punching. He was just sort of using the point and using the weight instead of.
He was holding back. It's true,
Yeah.
but the elbow is in a lot of ways, is a stronger point of contact than the fist. The fist. I watched some boxer talking about this, some old boxer, and I should have bookmarked it, but I didn't. Talking about it, and he said, the problem with the fist is it's so articulate. There's so many bones in it. He said, if you use your fist and punch somebody, you end up with a broken hand. So that's why why we wear gloves. It's not to protect the other guy, it's to protect your own hands.
Well, then they take their hand up. They take their hand too.
What's that?
They take their hand up too.
Yeah, exactly. They have to. So yeah, that was interesting.
But all the comments from those people that got hit would go, "My chest dented."
I bet. I bet. Yeah, if you take a little elbow into your chest or your solar plexus, yeah, you're gonna feel it. But you know what? The older I get, the less I want to screw around with that kind of stuff.
I like to look at it because the body mechanics behind it are very important.
Oh, absolutely.
Not that I can do it, but it just helps me visualize.
If you're going to use your elbows, you need to discover your loins back here, your loins, because that's what you use to move your elbow. Believe it or not. All right, I got to run. I gotta finish my project here in the studio. I don't know. I could show it to you here. So this is going to be a platform feeding station for the birds, And I've got to varnish the underside of this now. I've varnished one side of it. Should be nice and shiny.
Yeah. So you're making another one?
No, I'm repaired and am redoing the old one because it's not the birds that wear it out, it's the weather.
Yeah. I had two one of those wasps bees, mason bee hives,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the sun just blew them apart. All the joints that they had just so yeah. Did you finish Annie's studio?
Yeah, and we actually took a video of it, but it's just been one thing after another here, and I haven't had a chance. So I thought I would put together a little video to show you, a little 5-minute video to show you guys what it looked like before we started, what it looked like as we were doing it, and then what it looks like when we're done with it. It looks good.
Yeah, because when she sent me the video before you sent it out to the class, and she was kind of perturbed in our little text conversations.
But she was impatient. I don't blame her. But you know, when you if I had a shop with the right tools in it, you could do the whole thing in a couple of days. But when you don't have a shop and you're just working with hand tools instead of
Yeah.
a table saw and a miter saw and all that stuff, then it just takes a long time.
Yep.
Plus, I'm old. I'm old and I'm slow.
Yeah, this is killing me. This getting old business.
Yeah, it's hard. There's no doubt it's hard. But Tai Chi and Qigong will keep you younger. Will keep you younger than you would be otherwise. Let's put it that way.
Well, when I look at it in the grand scheme of things, I'm moving a hell of a lot more than most 70-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm doing what I can on the Tai Chi, and I'm doing walking 2+ miles a day and rowing 3 miles a day and taking a freaking nap every afternoon because now I have to.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I take a nap almost every afternoon.
It's like,
Hey,
but all right, man.
it is.